Thank you for joining us for Japan Foundation Touring Film Program's Associate Talk. My name is Junko Takekawa, Senior Arts Program Officer of Japan Foundation London, and I'm responsible for the programming content. As our touring film program, which started in early February, is coming to an end, we want to reflect on how we did it. In so doing, instead of only talking amongst ourselves, we thought it would be useful and then more interesting if people who are involved in like-minded festival in Japan in the UK were to share their thoughts and then practice with us. As films are one of the most readily available media to enjoy, now not only at cinema but also online, I suspect there's a slight misconception that it is easy to organize. My experience tells me it is not. But certainly, I would like to hear how other festivals did or are doing. For today's talk, we have invited 4 film festival directors. Sonari Josh, curator founder of Day for Night. Akon Meredith, director of Kotatsu Japanese Animation Festival. Joshua Smith, director of Japanese Avant-Garde and Experimental Film Festival. Yi Wang, director of a Queer East Film Festival. We have been a partner of most of their festivals in the past, and all of them were founded from scratch without existing institutional backup. You may call them either people with vision or risk takers, but whichever way, their festivals have been thriving. They are the festival you should watch out for if you wish to see some Japanese films. So thank you for your time for film festival directors. Next, Housekeeping Matters. Today's event will be recorded. As we are using webinar function, your names will not be viewable by other attendees. However, I strongly recommend you to keep your audio video muted throughout just in case. If you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A function to send in your question at any time. Remember that attendees' questions may be seen by everyone else so that you can avoid a particular question placed by another person which you would like answered, or if it's the same as yours. Simply click the sum up icon next to the question you wish to avoid. Unfortunately, due to time restrictions, we may not be able to pick up all of the questions you ask, so my apologies in advance. Lastly, as always, we will send you an online questionnaire, so please spare a short moment to complete it for a future event. That's all from me, so I'd like to call 4 festival directors onto this virtual stage on the screen. Please come in. Thank you so much. At this stage, I normally disappear. So my actual role is over, but today I'm going to host this event and ask some questions to you all because I myself, I have been very intrigued by what you have done and what you're thinking, how you organize that your film festival as myself programming and organizing just so, in a way, time consuming, so to speak. But I admire you because of it. You've done fantastic festival in the UK. So before I move on to some questions, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself one by one in order of alphabets. So first of all, Sonari, can you introduce yourself and your festival, please?
Hi, my name is Sonali Joshi and I'm joining you from Newcastle today. I'm a curator, writer and subtitler, and I'm the founder of Day for Night, where we work on curatorial projects, specialist distribution and access, so that's subtitles and audio description. And I'm also the director of Aperture Asia and Pacific Film Festival. I'm just going to show a few brief slides to give you a bit of a flavour and a sense of the shape of the festival. I co-founded Aperture a few years ago with another like-minded curator. We felt that there was a gap in the landscape of festivals in the UK. There was no longer any UK festivals solely dedicated to the whole of Asia, and that's what we set about creating. The principle behind Aperture really was to highlight underrepresented areas of Asian cinema, particularly the work of underground movements, collectives, emerging and diverse filmmakers. Programming consists of classic and contemporary cinema, but we place a particular focus on artists' moving image, as well as thematic strands. The key aim was to explore Asian cinemas in the plural. And we didn't want to replicate the great work that was already being done by many other established festivals in the UK, but rather complement what other festivals were doing. Aperture takes, on the next slide, you'll see a bit about the structure of the festival. So Aperture takes place twice a year in London in June and September. That came about through a slight accident through funding, but it turned out to be a model that actually worked really well in terms of building audience development, and in between the festival tours over the summer. And the festival is funded principally by my company Day for Night through the work that we do in access services with partners Cream, University of Westminster, and funding from the Arts Council and Purin Pictures. While the festival's been on the next slide, this just illustrates what we've been doing more recently. So while the festival has been on hold during COVID, the one thing we did do was this particular Japanese themed program at the end of last year, although we had originally intended to do it as a thematic strand of Aperture in 2020. And on the next slide, we can see that the program sought to explore the interaction between architecture and cinema, as well as wider themes around the built environment and cities. On this slide, you can see a bit more about broader themes to do with natural environment and landscape. And then on the last slide, we also explored themes around design. So whilst we're currently rethinking Aperture in light of having had to pause for a couple of years, we very much hope that this particular programme will evolve into an ongoing event series. And we're also looking forward to bringing Aperture back into cinemas in the not too distant future.
Okay, thank you so much. So next, Eiko, please.
Oh, hi. Thank you for letting me join today. My name is Eiko Merdes. I am the founder and also the festival director of the Kotatsu Japanese Animation Festival. Could you start the footage, please? I got the footage to show you today. Thank you. Okay, so this is the opening animation animated by JRI, the Japanese animation. Originally, we were going to just use this for like 1 year. We just keep using every year for like 12 years now. And this is one of the venue in Cardiff. And because we like to be more accessible, we have like a marketplace in there to sell like Japanese things, and also have like a local artist. And yeah, sometimes we have like a Japanese food as well. This is all before COVID, as you can see. And we actually went back to the cinema last year, and we have the marketplace, and we also doing some educational workshops as well. It's dependent on the grant, but we've done some animation workshops and some manga drawing workshops, and we did some online as well during the COVID time. And this is the calligraphy. We actually done the online, I think as January, and we also had some guests from Japan at the Creator Domo, directed Boda. And also we're trying to do a bit of like a fundraising for the Vanilla Festival. So we normally have like prizes donated, and we have some kind of premieres. And yeah, there's some Masaki Yuso films and like Ghibli films. This is Makuya, the first feature film directed by Mari Okada's debut film, and that's Mirai. we're trying to be more like a diverse, although it's great to see like feature film as well, but it's just we're trying to screen like films and maybe only you don't really see much in UK, especially in the cinema, and we're trying to screen like films we only see it at the festival. Yeah, so these are the films. Screen. So yeah, so we're hoping to do more online workshops and screen the films at the venues again this year. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next is Joshua. Can you introduce yourself and your festival, please?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Joshua Smith and I'm the director of the Japanese Avant-Garde and Experimental Film Festival. I think we have a sort of highlights reel here being shown from our previous edition. JAFE was founded in 2017, and like, when I say founded, I mean it in a really informal sense. I met a friend, George Crossway, for a coffee. And asked if he wanted to put on a public screening with me. We both had a really personal interest in Japanese cinema. We both studied Japanese film, and we're particularly interested in post-war avant-garde Japanese film, as well as contemporary experimental work. So we set up JAFE as a London-based non-profit organisation that aims to screen work from Japan that is otherwise underrepresented by UK exhibitors. We try and draw links between classic Japanese avant-garde cinema and contemporary experimental film and artist moving image. We also host educational events with the aim of bringing academic discourse on underground Japanese cinema into the public realm. Our first screening was of the BFI's 35mm print of Inosuke Kinagasa's Page of Madness. And with limited resources, crowdfunding, we managed to cobble together enough support and goodwill to organise this screening in our old university lecture hall. We had a live musical accompaniment with a benshi, which was very special. We had no idea how many people would turn up, optimistic that maybe 40 or 50 people might attend. Through social media marketing, word of mouth, and just like putting up posters, flyers around town, eventually 250 people came to the screening. So this test run, as it were, was enough to tell us that there's clearly an appetite for this kind of work. And it became the motivation behind expanded editions of JAFE. We've since hosted a one-off screening of ethnographic documentary Caniba, and held 3 extended festival editions, each with its own theme. In total, we've had 2,500 JAFE attendees. We've screened over 50 films, a mixture of features and shorts, hosted 4 panel discussions, networking drinks events, and a filmmakers workshop. And we've had over 20 guest speakers and around 10 directors attend the festival. And we've had a 5-year relationship with the Japan Foundation as our festival partners, who've offered venue support, access to their extensive film archive, and assistance negotiating with Japanese distributors. And this is really like invaluable support to an independent festival such as ours. So I'm really glad to be here to talk today about the mechanics of putting on a film festival, and how quite niche, unseen works eventually make their way to the screen.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you so much for mentioning Japan Foundation. And the next one, the last one, it's E. Can you introduce yourself and your festival? Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yi Wang. I am the director and programmer of Queer East Film Festival. So Queer East is an LGBTQ+ film festival that showcases rarely seen queer cinema from East and Southeast Asia and seeks to amplify the voices of Asian communities in the UK. we only started in 2020 during the pandemic, which was a bit crazy. And the festival actually started from a very simple realization from my personal experience that here in the UK, you don't see a lot of queer Asian cinemas being shown in the public space and cinemas. And that's kind of like brought my idea of like why not started a festival that dedicated to queer Asian titles. And the festival usually screens around 50 films from 17 countries in the region, and the program mixed with 35mm prints, retrospectives, documentaries, features, short films, and artist movie image and experimental films. So technically, we are not like a Japan-focused film festival. But in our festival, we have these like focus country strand, which we pick a country every year and then highlight the long history of the country's queer filmmaking. In 2021, we by working with Japan Foundation and other Japanese cultural foundations in the UK, we chose Japan as our focus country, and then we screened extensive lineup of Japanese titles ranging from films made in the 80s until present days to kind of like showcase different stage of queer filmmaking in Japan and also explore different perspectives of Japanese queer culture. So I just want to quickly show you a clip of our festival trailer last year so everyone can get a sense of what kind of films and works we are doing. Thank you. Yeah, so this is just a brief look of our film festival, and the festival usually taking place in over 8 cinemas in London. And start from last year, we also did a small scale of nationwide tour to cities like Manchester, Edinburgh, and then bring some Japanese titles to these cities as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I like your sting or opening sort of sequence. It's really, really, well made. Anyway, thank you so much. All of the festival are very unique to me in a different way because either sort of is thematically run or just specific genre of the films that you are taking up, like animation or LGBTQ. I know that some of you already touched upon that, how you came up with the idea of festival, but if you just talk a little bit more about that, some of you, for example, that I know that LGBTQ wasn't really, for East Asia film, it wasn't available. That's why you decided to do it 2 years ago. But for example, have you done any research before you starting off? Because you launched a massive organization all of a sudden 2 years ago.
Yeah, of course, involves a lot of research. I think the good thing for us is, even we don't see a lot of queer Asian films in public, or let's call commercially, but actually in the UK there's an extensive research academia that are focused on queer Asian titles. So I think when I started, I had a chance to chat with a lot of like academia, or like people like Junko in Japan Foundation, and then kind of we are discussing how to kind of bring the queer Japanese films to the UK. And I think that's very important, because far too often, like, we still see some queer Asian titles, they are very classics, and then they can like stick in audience minds. So like these films are being kept repeat again. And then, but in our festival, we want to also bring some freshness and modernity of queerness in the Japanese culture. So yeah, I did a lot of research. I asked a lot of my friends in Japan to see like what's their current offering in Japan, and then that's why we screen some films actually doesn't really like so-called like fit into the conventional LGBT titles, but more like exploring the queerness in the Japanese culture.
Right. Okay, it's very interesting. Like us, I started off that touring film program almost like 20 years ago, 19 years ago, precisely. The reason for that is that not necessarily that Japanese films are available in this country. They were available, and there's a lot of festival introduced as famous names like Kitano Takeshi or Miike Takashi or all sorts of names. I know that, but I thought there was kind of Japanese films underrepresented in the regional area. And then also I had a kind of fear that if one programmer in the British programmer doing that programming all the time, every time, maybe that's a taste is quite same. So, and then there was a lot of other films that we wanted to show. That's why we started, but we didn't actually even include it in London. We started, with just only 3 venues in the regional area, but it just expanded quite a lot. Like Joshua, you sort of, a starting point, almost like a natural progression from what you studied, you said. But did you actually have a kind of sense of success when you, started the first kind of, experimental film festival? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were really sort of, motivated by the first screening that we put on. And yeah, starting from quite sort of, not really sure how it was going to go, but just having a desire to put on films that are unseen in the UK. I mean, I think that's something that we can all relate with, and that's what we all kind of want to do as programmers and curators of film festivals. Generally, I think we were used to seeing a UK audience's access to Japanese film as mainly through Kurosawa, Ozu, Studio Ghibli, and perhaps late 90s, early 2000s, the Tartan Asia Extreme genre of J-horror films. So, Japanese cinema history is rich and full, and having been interested and studied post-war Japanese cinema, we were keen to sort of share this very kind of important sort of tumultuous period of Japanese political filmmaking, which kind of emerged post-war. And I guess for us, having a thematic sort of umbrella for each festival edition was to provide context and avoid risking kind of Orientalism or exoticism, because the films, could become divorced of their motivations at best. They would be experimental and at worst just sort of weird. We didn't want to sort of perpetuate stereotypes of Japanese art and culture, and sort of negate the potential power and meaning of these films. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we came from, and we were just really encouraged with the audiences that came along to our festivals and our screenings early in its sort of lifetime. We did two sort of one-off festival events before then sort of expanding into a weekend of screenings and a more sort of festival atmosphere. But that's always something that we wanted to create. We wanted to create this sense of community over a weekend. We wanted people to come together and discuss these films, and for it not just to be you know, we're projecting films on a cinema screen. You come in, you know, you see the film, you leave. And that's why it's important to have things, well, for us, it's important to have things like the networking events and panel discussions and filmmakers workshops, so that we're not only sharing our sort of passion for these works with a general audience, but we're actually engaging with that audience as well.
Thank you so much. When you actually touch upon the various sort of important issues that we are come back to, you know, to it. Eiko, I know that your reason of setting up this Kotatsu Animation Festival 10 years ago is probably purely regional elements in it, because you're based in that Cardiff, and then you always say that there aren't many sort of Japanese films screened in Cardiff. Is that kind of first reason that you decided to set up?
Yeah, that is the main reason. Is there's two reasons. Obviously, because at that time, when I started the festival 2010, the chapter, and there are some screenings of like Japanese films, but this compared to the current trends, there's not many, and it's quite surprisingly before I do speak to people here, and generally people like Japan, and I think then the people saying like it would be nice to have more Japan related events, because it's not only the films. This Japanese culture is quite rich as well, like as Joshua says, like calligraphy or literacy, or but just because we in Wales, a bit countryside, and we have lots of sheep, so there's not many Japan related events, and also the funding, we might have less funding compared to England. And then also funny enough, there used to be like a big animation festival in Cardiff about 20 years ago, and that is also stopped at that time. And also because I'm from Hiroshima, and when I was younger, I used to help the Hiroshima has a really amazing festival, Hiroshima International Animation Festival. They have like a guest all over from Japan, and like they had like a Harryhausen or like a really famous people. And I just really like missing this because I like anime and animation, and I myself is otaku, so I thought it's just nice to have some kind of like animation festival in the capital Wales, because just basically we're just missing out, and we can't really go to London or, you know, like Scotland for like for the premieres and all the things.
Okay. Thank you so much. And again, you know, this is very interesting points there, because you are Japanese, I'm Japanese, or other people are not Japanese, how that's they actually manage the program. So we will sort of, you know, come back to it, you know, later. But just, you know, just staying around that founding period, I just want to ask all of you, I mean, some of you already mentioned, like Joshua, you did that crowdfunding whatsoever, but like Sonali, where does the finance come from? Did you actually find it risky to run a festival or whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, I would say risk taking is very much at the core of keeping the festival going, and our work at Day for Night more broadly. And I mean, the work that we do at Day for Night is essentially what enables the festival to happen. Without that, we would find it very difficult to realize a festival of this nature and with the ambition that we've got. That said, with each edition that we held at the festival, we've now done 4 editions. Obviously, audience development has been consolidated, and through that, that's enabled us to reach wider funding opportunities. So I briefly touched on the fact that we ended up with a structure whereby we start off in London in June, and then we do another section in September, also in London, and then we tour in between. And that came about because we were able to secure some funding from a Thai foundation wanting to support Southeast Asian cinema outside of the Southeast Asian region, which is one of our key focuses. But the timing meant that it couldn't happen in June, but there were other reasons why the festival had to happen in June. So we thought, let's try this out. And it actually worked. It turned out to be a lot of work because it kept us busy right through the summer. But at the core, it's the work that we do as a film organisation, as a specialist distributor, and most importantly, the work that we do in access, which kind of feeds into what we do as curators and a distributor anyway, because it's all about enabling greater access to films. But I would also just add that the programme that we did at the end of last year, we did secure funding from the BFI, which we're extremely grateful for, because we would not have been able to do that, such an ambitious programme in the context of COVID at that time.
Mute. The Zoom say you are mute. Thanks. Yes, finance is a very good sort of point of discussion because, well, I mean, you have ambition. You have a knowledge. You have ambitions and visions, but if you don't have money, that you are stuck. So it's just reality is money makes the world go round. That's really true to film festival as well. What about E? Did you have any pool of money before you started this festival?
Yeah, so I would like to, yeah, I think it would be great to talk a little bit about my experience, because I wasn't not from film background at all. So before the festival, I was actually doing theater, and mainly in the UK and European. So that's why I do have like in terms of like how to work with organizations, public sectors in the UK. So the festival was actually started from the support with BFI and also with Mayor of London. So there's a cultural program called London Borough of Culture that's initiated by the Mayor of London, which start from 2019, and annually they will choose a borough to kind of like do an year-round cultural program. So the first year of Queer East in 2020 was majorly supported by these two English funding, and we did Focus Taiwan in our first year. So we also received the support from the Ministry of Culture of Taiwan, and that's why kind of like enable us to be able to do the first year. And then we did. Yeah, and I think they are very happy. They were very happy, especially BFI. They were very encouraged by our works of showing these queer films that people may not get a chance to see before. So we continue to receive their support for our second year. And of course, last year we have the support from Japan Foundation and Dawa, Sasakawa, and Japan Society. So yeah, so it's a festival that heavily rely on public funding, I would say. And yeah, but I think we are in the right track. So we are hoping we can kind of like receive more in the future to support our national tour.
Yeah, just moving on to that other question, because we are talking about finance. So I think we just move on. I know that BFI provided quite substantial sort of budget, allocated to that Japanese Theatre Film Festival last year. That's really great. But I'm not sure how much it will continue for, Japan element, because it's not just really Japan that they have to take care of. And also that public fund is not always abundant, like sort of, in such an economic crisis. And, probably, not just only commercial, but public funding may actually, tighten their sort of purse. What's your sort of view on that, take on that, in the future funding, for example? Just in Eiko, how do you feel, crisis, or, in the future, in reflection to your continuation, for example?
I mean, I have to say the money is always a challenge, but we do have a great festival supporting organization in Wales, and I have to say all the grant officers are lovely. And we started, but the thing is, because festival organize, supporting grants, they have like the budget is limited. So what we started doing was, because luckily we just registered as a charity before the COVID. And then we trying to do more like a community event, such as like workshops. And I'm pitching some ideas with a lottery grant again this year. So just trying to be a bit more like trying to find the different sources of the grants. And also we raise money from like Amazon Smile, or, there's a lot of ways of doing it. I think being a festival is quite limited or rigid. I think it'd be best to do like a community, trying to get the community.
It's more like associated in accessories.
Yeah, and trying to get like a different source of grants if it's possible. I think that's the key to survive, I think.
Right, okay. I mean, Sonali, you are doing the distribution. Do you think the distribution money goes to the festival as well?
Not hugely. I mean, there are ways in which it can facilitate. So for instance, if we're acquiring a film to distribute, but we can use the festival as a platform, that helps us with screening fees, for instance. But other than that, the kind of films that we distribute, we're talking about really highly specialized films. We distribute between 2 to 4 films a year. So it's very limited in scope because of the finances involved, but distribution itself doesn't fund anything that we do. Right. It facilitates in certain ways. But I would just add one other point as well, that we did secure funding from the Arts Council, and not that it shaped the programme, but it certainly helped in some ways. But with having such a strong focus on artist moving image and artist filmmakers, that opened us up to Arts Council funding, and also building in cross art form events. So we've done things that have kind of crossed between film and music, for instance, film and architecture, and that has opened us up to funding from the Arts Council.
Right, okay. As Eiko says, yes.
Yeah, and I think in-kind support is also crucial and really valuable. Sorry,
Joshua, you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I think the points raised by Eiko and Sonali about, I think, being sort of flexible, I guess, with what you kind of want to do, and also creative with kind of the funding bodies that you're going to. I mean, for example, with our screening of Cannibal, it's an experimental film about Issei Sagawa, the cannibal, and it's a documentary, but it has an anthropological angle. So we went to the Royal Anthropology Institute and asked them for their support. So I guess you sort of set your program, you decide on the films that you kind of want to see, want to show, and then you get creative with the funding bodies that you're applying to. And I think that it's a very good point that Eiko and Sonali have sort of raised there.
Okay, because we are just time is taking around, so we just move on to the next stage, which is programming. As programming is a key, for example. I mean, money is important, but if there is no content, people don't come. How do you normally organize a programming? I mean, obviously that's Eiko is Japanese, I'm Japanese. I can really, see what's going on in Japan quite, easily. And the language, our language has advantage, of course, nonetheless. But just, Sonali and then Josh, I'm sure you understand Japanese, but and then how do you do the programming, actually? Joshua?
I think it's about sort of networks, really. I spent a year in Japan. A lot of that was sort of trying to meet people and meet distributors and meet other programmers and curators, and just just expanding your network, and creating a sort of network of support. So when you do decide on the kind of films you want to show, there's someone who can, put you in touch with an archive in Japan and actually help you with those negotiations, because as we know, it is mostly sort of done on introductions, so that was a big part for me is sort of trying to expand the network. But we have in our program we program classic Japanese avant-garde cinema and contemporary experimental short form films. So we kind of sort of make links between these two strands under one theme, which actually proves quite difficult. You don't want to be shoehorning certain films into that thematic umbrella, but each year, we tend to find that there's a kind of a zeitgeist that a lot of young emerging filmmakers are tapping into with their films. So the contemporary films, we do see themes popping up each year through the submissions that we get. We attend a lot of film festivals and screenings, so that's also part of the research. And then with the classic works, it's always kind of securing the rights is a long, arduous process of.
Yeah, we will come back to that. I just want to ask. Thank you. Just want to ask you, that's all of you. Who is running submission system for festival? So instead, you got submission. There's a deadline, and then other sort of distributors submit the contents to you, and then you choose. All right.
Yeah.
What about Sonali?
We don't take submissions. It was something that we talked about right at the beginning, and it was just our curatorial choice,
Right, okay. Yeah.
to focus on the work that came to us kind of naturally. I would echo what Josh said also, that it's very much about keeping an ear to the ground, and for us very much around building relationships with artists and filmmakers and maintaining those relationships and following people's work over the years very much.
Yeah, I would like to address the submission thing. So that's the only thing. We started a small submission last year, but this year we are using like Film Freeway, which is a major submission platform. But I do find quite interesting about because we are doing creation titles, which majority of the title we screen, they are all like independently made. And also we have this idea of like we want films like reflect authentic experience. So like I own a lot of films are like made in Asia directly. And I do find like this submission system do give us a lot of submission, mainly actually still like a lot of them are based in Western countries, which they may be more familiar with these kind of like submission system. So we still spend I still spend a lot of time trying to source the films that are made in Asia, and especially like when you talk about LGBTQ filmmaking, it's always a lot of them are underground, a lot of them are small scale budgets. So so like it's always quite interesting to talk talking about the programming. Is I think for the festival like us, we all need to spend quite a lot of time like doing the actual research and then kind of like making connection with the filmmakers back in like Japan and other Asian countries. Yeah.
Okay, Eiko, you got some trustee system. Do you have an advisor for you, when you program? content?
It's basically the trustees, because we're the charity. The trustee is only to run the organization as a festival, but but they don't really say about the programming or anything, because I am the employed festival director. So mainly I normally go with like a certain, it is depend on the budget as well. If there's films, loads of films we'd like to screen, but if one, because we do have to keep in the budget. So we normally go to the one company, and if we have any more like spare money, so maybe try another company. And for the short films, because we like to be more diverse, and I like to bring more young people's works as well. So I normally go for the shorter films, just to maybe ask my friends in Japan. They're working for like animation like industry, so maybe yeah, just ask around, or maybe I just search on like specific like maybe Japanese Animation Awards website kind of thing.
Right, that's interesting. And then when you program, particularly, Sonali, this is a question to Sonali, because when I program the contents, I normally see whether the work was popular in Japan and how that it was received in Japan, rather than just how they are received, in the UK, or how they will be received in the UK, for example, just balance-wise. I know that your sort of program, Sonali, you're very ambitious. And then lots of films I never, heard or never seen in this country. Yeah, when I did the search, that not necessarily popular in Japan. So what is your criteria in, choosing those films?
I don't think there are any sort of concrete criteria as such. I think a lot of what I do from a curatorial point of view is quite instinctive, but that links very much to understanding and knowing audiences. I think a lot of it also comes from just things that we absorb when we're on the festival circuit, and being at festivals, speaking to others, sensing the vibe, the buzz, the kind of tangible feel that we get when we're in that darkened auditorium with others, and just thinking about what would be something that adds to our philosophy of wanting to enable greater access to a more diverse choice for audiences. I mean, I think as curators and programmers, we all have our own certain
Taste
things that we lean towards.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that will kind of come into choices that we make, but I do always try very much to keep audiences at the center of that. But in relation to what you're saying, of course I'm thinking about audiences in the UK, but that also comes from conversations that we have with cinemas, because we're relying on cinemas to reach their core audiences as well as everything that we do around that. And all of that is trying to build that wider, broader audience.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I'll just tell you that Japan Foundation has got this year 20 titles. I chose 20 titles, and then just presented at each venues. Because we got 27 venues. They have a liberty to choose from, other than in London, which one they are going to choose. And then surprisingly, majority of UK venues tend to go for the same title. And then I think, as you said, as leaning towards their instinct, they are leaning towards their taste, or leaning towards their audience, I mean, this is really true. However, I actually try to diversify that content itself. When you put onto the table in the UK sort of selection, they may actually choose certain sort of titles, and then also in my experience is not necessarily that film professional people choose most popular one in the UK as well. So there's a different kind of type of audiences, of course. There's just passers-by, a happenstance, just likes Japanese cinema, or very, very knowledgeable film connoisseurs. So I think it's quite difficult, probably, cater for both taste, I suppose. Talking which that For example, in Japan Foundation Tree program, not to, taking that any films that is already readily available, like a DVD, Blu-ray, or even that's past screened, for example, several times. Yes, I know. For example, E or Joshua mixed that already screened, or even Eiko already screened film in film in the past, together with a new title. What's the reason for that? Do you have any specific reason? Or is that deliberate, or just happened to be?
We tend to screen films that I mean, our short experimental works generally are quite new and may not have been on the festival circuit that long. And then, the post-war avant-garde films that we show may or may not have been screened in the UK. Most of the time they haven't been screened before in the UK, or they've been screened a long time ago. And so, a big part of our budget will go towards bringing sort of 35mm prints over from archives in Japan. Subtitling. Sonali is, has helped us with subtitling films that haven't been shown in the UK with English subtitles before. So, on Sonali's point on access, that's something that we're sort of very passionate about and want the general UK audience to access quite esoteric works that have not been seen before in the UK.
Okay, you just said that in the rehearsal, very interesting points that you actually mix, new and old.
Yeah, so probably like Joshua, like the retrospective films, we usually on screen will aim to like have like 35mm print, because that's the rare thing, and also in a way it's also a selling point. But I think in general, the idea of mix with retrospective and new films is always to kind of like, the idea is I always try to explore different topics, different perspectives, and different stage of the general queer culture in Japan. And so that's why I always make sure we have like films from male directors, female directors, films talking about transgender communities, films talking about lesbian, talking about gay, talking about elder, like queer community. So this is kind of the idea of like, I want to give you a broad sense of what's the Japanese queer culture looks like. And also I think it's very important for these like more well-known retrospectives or popular titles. It actually help us to draw the audience look into our program, because like, for example, like Funeral Parade of Roses, or like Ghost in the Shell, these are like well-known Japanese title, and then it kind of draw the audience into our program. And also the other thing I want to mention is because our audience are very young. So I think from the survey we did last year, like over 75% of audience are under age 30. And so a lot of film titles we are talking about, like we all very familiar with, for them it's actually new titles, like the films they never seen before. Like we screened Kohato last year. I think like I saw that like a long time ago, but for a lot of young generation, that's probably the first time they see that on screen. So that's always the idea. And then for the modern contemporary Japanese title, I always want to ensure that they bring authentic experience of what queer community living in Japan now. Because I think a lot of queer Asian titles usually fall into a very stereotypical portrayal of queer Asian characters. So that's why the idea of these new titles is to help audience understand what it means to be Asian and to be Japanese in contemporary Asia.
Okay. Well, just talking about, of course, the film screening won't be, made possible without a good relationship with distributors, of course. And then quite often that we heard, I also experienced that, unfortunately, some Japanese distributors are very tough, and then license fees are very expensive. And I'm sure, I mean, as much as I do, I know that sometimes that how much they asked is a decisive point in curatorial elements. You know, you can't really, you know, pay, you know, awful lot of money for one particular screening. So what is your take on, you know, working with a Japanese distributor? Is that really, there's any issues or easy, difficult? For those people who are doing the Asia, for example, country like, you know, Sonari or E, I mean, you can, you know, talk about Japanese distributor in reflection, you know, related to, in light of with other, you know, I'm dealing with other distributors. So first of all, Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we started the festival, it was extremely difficult to develop or even contact, you know, Japanese distributors, especially the big, the larger Japanese distributors. I mean, I won't be sort of naming names or anything, but you know, some of them are quite sort of inaccessible, and yeah, you're confronted with quite extortionate, prohibitively expensive screening fees, and that's just to screen the film. That's not to bring it over to the UK, and you know, yeah. So basically, you know, we were sort of confronted with this this problem, and I think, you know, just going back to what I said about networks, developing your networks, asking for help. You know, we all essentially want to be doing the same thing. We all want to be showing these kinds of works in the UK, and, you know, with establishing those networks, you know, eventually you're introduced to someone, you know, who can perhaps negotiate on the rate for you, have established that relationship with the distributor, and, you know, you can get in through that way. So yeah, I mean, over the years, you know, I think I've definitely seen the larger distributors actually become more kind of open to and more receptive to screening, you know, these kinds of works in the UK. So I have seen that change probably in the past four years.
Yeah. I think it's very important what you said, you know, like building up your network and trust with a distributor, because probably the first one, as you said, is difficult. Probably you have a reaction from distributors. Who are you? You know, from the, you know, that is the first things, because they know International Film Festival, but they may not be bothered by, you know, smaller, you know, just emerging festival. So it could be quite hard. I could imagine, you know, could have been very, you know, hard to start up. Eiko, you are Japanese. Do you think you find the advantage in talking to distributor in Japan?
Not really. I think it is a little bit difficult to chase up from Japan, especially for the feature films. And yeah, and then again, it's up to the budget as well, because we only got the limited budget for the screening fee. So that's why I personally trying to get the films which is available in UK, and I rather spend the money left over for the new emerging talents. Yeah, for the shorter films, because we're trying to, all the way at the Japanese animation festivals go, we're trying to screen more like young talent, especially like females, because as you might know, there's a lot of like Japanese animation feature films mainly so dominated, directed by the male. So that's why I'm trying to get new talent, because we screened like 2 university graduate students, female students works last year, and I rather use that money for new talents, thinking about from 10, 20 years from now on, rather than people already too established.
Yeah. What about Sonali? You are dealing with different countries. Do you find it particularly any, I wouldn't say issues, but any sort of, you know, outstanding issues that you actually noticed by dealing with Japanese distributors?
I can't say that it's any more challenging than the other countries that I deal with. I suppose I do also have the advantage that I spend like at least a month or so in Japan every year, and then go to Busan Film Festival as well. So I'm in that space where I'm constantly talking to distributors and rights holders. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's been like we've said already, it's been a lot about developing relationships, but also a lot of the content that we program comes directly from artists and filmmakers as well.
Right. Okay.
And so a lot of that has come from being on the ground. I mean,
Right,
with
okay.
the program we did last year, I spent a lot of time in Japan on and off over a good number of years, building those relationships for a long time. And that's helped hugely. But no particular challenges specific to Japan, comparatively.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you know, in nutshell, is of course, you know, network is very important. You know, building up trust with them is very important, and also, of course, in you know, choosing a film, you, as somebody says, whether the film has got subtitles. That's another big sort of hurdle for, you know, putting foreign films, particularly, you know, Japanese, probably, you know, the film itself. I just want to move on to the next one is the audience. I know that E already said that your audience is under 30s. Do you, other people, can you just briefly mention your demography of audience, just quickly? Eiko?
Okay, so basically we toured Chapter and Aberystwyth, and lastly we toured Ponty as well. But mainly Chapter is a mixture. They have quite established family audience, but also Cardiff University, they got like anime society. So we have some students coming from anime society, from like Swansea Anime Society, and also Aberystwyth, because the venue is actually inside the university. And there's a lovely like boys coming, I shouldn't say boys, but there's students from Anime Society group in Aberystwyth University. So we have a lot of like students coming as well.
Joshua?
Like Yi, I think, you know, we tend to draw a majority of young audiences, so under 35. We've increased our non-white audience over the past 4 years. And yeah, I mean, we talked briefly about budget. I think part of, depending on budget, you know, we did translate our program, our brochure into Japanese.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's very unique. Yeah.
And we felt that actually that year, you know, we were able to access or reach a larger Japanese audience as a result. So that was kind of the thinking behind that. That's not something that we can do every year. It depends, you know, it depends on budget. It's something I wish we could do every year. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming, but you know, we're constantly trying to make efforts to draw new audiences into our festival space. So yeah, it's a lot of active marketing, social media marketing. And we found that over the years as well, you know, we're doing less and less printed marketing, also just due to the sort of ecological impact. But really, you know, to attract young audiences, we're staying online mostly.
Okay. What about Sonale?
Our audiences are quite mixed, but I would say there's a hardcore cinephile audience, definitely, Asian film and culture enthusiasts. And like Eiko, we also reach the student and academic audience, principally through the partnership we have with Cream Westminster, but we also work with a number of other universities as well. But I think overall, our audience development is definitely geared towards building younger audiences, because these are our future audiences that we want to nurture as well. But yeah, a fairly mixed picture, and equally in terms of demographics as well.
Yeah. Okay.
There were always, sorry, just a point, there's always the hardcore group of older cinephiles.
Yes.
All of our festivals.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
One, so,
yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, you know, believe me, there's when we you know, have that screening in London, for example. You see that's that same place every time, for example. I'm very grateful to them, of course, nonetheless. And then there's a certain tendency, it just really depends on what you actually screen. For example, when we screen as a classic film, they tend to go for that, appealing to the senior audiences. And the one time I was told off because I put that classic film at 8 o'clock in the night. And then some of that older people, said to me, "Why did you put that classic film at 8 o'clock? I'm going to bed by then," So I got to be very careful. Think about who is the main audience. At the same time, that you have to use your film screening to diversify, expand, develop your audience, of course, nonetheless. Okay, and there's a lot of things I want to talk, but I just want to talk about, because of that 2022, we have a corona. That corona changed everything in a way, and the way of that screening the films, and then the way of people living. I just want to touch upon that online screening as well as the physical screening. I know all of you have a mixture of the online screening, physical screening, and then this year particularly, I know that Joshua did that both online and the physical screening, and then Eiko did that online screening 2020. We did online screening last year, but what do you think about us online screening? Is it easier or difficult or whatsoever? What's your take? Sorry, just going to that E. Have you done the online screening?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I think our festival was literally hit by pandemic. So the first year of festival was actually planned for April 2020, and we launched our program in March, and then next week it went national lockdown, so we had to cancel the whole entire festival. And then, so we actually started doing online screenings back in 2020, like we did an online series in April 2020, June 2020, and yeah, and that's kind of like what and then also we bring a couple of online screenings in our actual first year festival as well. But strangely, last year I just decided like I don't want to do online screening. So
why is that?
Because I think for us, we are a very new film festival, and in a way I feel online audience are kind of like a bit too virtual for me. Like I can't see them. I don't know their reaction. And I think that's a bit dangerous for a first year film festival, because like you kind of don't know where's your audience are. You don't know what's your audience look like. So last year when we did postpone our festival to September last year, because there wasn't you won't be able to do anything before June. So in September, I just decided like the majority of our events should be in person. So we did run a pretty much in-person film festival. We put on the panel discussion online because of international travel restriction.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think in a way, online the first year, so the online screenings in 2020 did help us reach audience we wouldn't be possible to reach as a first year film festival. So we get quite a lot of positive feedback from people in Manchester, Edinburgh, and that's actually helped us decide we want to tour to there. So the last year our national tour was actually based on the database we collect from the first year, and to determine which city we should go first.
Yeah. Okay.
But in a way, I have very mixed feeling on that, because mainly because I mentioned like online audience are a bit difficult to understand their reaction to the film, and also I think a lot of films just available for online screenings. For example, the 35mm prints. The reason for that is you need to screen it in cinema. So yeah, so like I think for us this year we will continue putting in-person screenings as our method, but we are also exploring some idea of like run some online contents for audience. Yeah.
Okay. Just Eiko, you said to me that that was really difficult to organize online screening. You did that, a wonderful job. But what was the issue there?
Oh, I think because we haven't got much money to go on the secure platform, So we done only on YouTube, and luckily all these directors, filmmakers, even Koji Yamamura, agreed to go on YouTube. But I think there's a lot of Japanese distributors really worried about the security of the platform, and also maybe because we were dealing I was dealing with one specific director, and he basically told me he doesn't want to screen at all online because it has to be in a cinema. So there's this kind of barrier as well. So we done the on YouTube, and that was good. But because we screen the Japanese animation only, and there's enough platforms like Netflix and Crunchyroll. So I think if we got enough funding, I would like to do like maybe online screening of the young talents. I think other things doesn't cover, but we do like going to the cinema, and because we had the because of the guideline of the grant last year, done a festival in Chapter, and that was actually the first festival after the cinema reopening, and we had the best turn up since reopen, because some people just really happy to see other regulars, and we have some drinks together, and we talk about like other films or like TV. So I think it's just I know it's convenient, it's nice, you can watch anytime online, but it's more like a gathering, social gathering, and just discuss about, and also like it's the joy of sharing as well. It's because if you see like a nice film, you learn to talk about it with other people, even they're like strangers, you never met before, but just in the same place, so like, oh, did you like that, kind of thing. So
yeah. I do understand. I know that's exactly what Joshua said, that like creating that discourse and discussion and network among those audiences in a community, so to speak. But yet you did that online in Joshua, in parallel with a physical sort of screening at Barbican. What was the reason for it?
Well, first of all, it kind of going online kind of goes against our festival principles in that in some respects. We sort of went for it because we were lucky in that the Barbican had sort of they had their own platform, and that we could show some of our films. Some of them we just couldn't screen online because of their format, but also, as Eiko said, because a lot of the distributors are in Japan don't want them to go online for security purposes. But it was, the festival was just when cinemas were reopening. There was still a lot of uncomfort about sort of coming into these spaces and enclosed cinema spaces. So I think for that audience, we wanted to make as many films available as possible. We actually saw a really low take-up of online screenings. So, nothing can really replicate that festival experience for us. And yeah, I think, it's something that we tried. I don't think I'd want to do it again. And certainly, it did allow some people across the UK to access our films, which is something that, as a London-based film festival, we were quite happy to see. I would have wanted to go further and, and enable the films to be accessed internationally, but that's another security issue and an IP address sort of issue. So, sort of mixed feelings about online screenings.
Right. This is, with the online screening is something that people, want to know quite a lot, because I can see, for Q&A box, Jack Bradbury, Jonathan wrote, another Jack Bradbury, all talking about online, hybrid online screening. And this is something that I always find difficult to tackle, because people actually think that online screening could be easier for us to organize. It's easier for them to see it, definitely. But do you really see that online screening is easier than that, running a physical screening? Is anybody actually think that online screening is easier than physical screening? Can you raise a hand? Yeah, that's a reality. Yes, but would you like to do that a hybrid screening in the future? Like, Sonali, are you planning to do the hybrid or?
Well, I mean, going back to the start of the pandemic, we took an active decision not to do an online program in 2020. I was actually stuck in Japan at the time. At the beginning of the pandemic for several months. So I knew very early on, so I'm experiencing everything quite early in the pandemic, that doing a physical festival wasn't possible. But we weren't going to substitute that with an online program. That said, when we did our Japanese program at the end of last year, we did take a decision to do it online as well. And that was partly because we actually did manage to clear rights for some films to be shown Europe-wide and some films to be shown internationally. So we felt that was an opportunity worth taking. But I think echoing some of the other things that have been mentioned here, firstly, logistically, that there were changes. And secondly, the take-up was pretty low. I think there's just, there's such a plethora of things available online. So to find your audiences online, we certainly found that very difficult. And the other challenge was also in relation to exhibitors, because we had to do the physical screenings, the in-person screenings first, and then later on come to our online screenings. And it didn't really work in the way that we would have hoped. That said, we anticipated that as well. Whether we would do it again is a different question. I think we would, but only in the sense of kind of optimizing our reach with audiences. If we can reach some wider audiences, then why not? And if we can facilitate that. So for instance, when we did it at the end of last year, we've got a platform for a year, so we might as well use that and see if we can build some wider audiences beyond where we are physically.
At the same time, I do understand that some people approached me that I have mobility issues, that I can't go to cinema, or I'm not living in that area where this work is screened. So I'm just kind of torn in between. Of course, every time I hear such a comments, but I completely agree with all of that panels that online screening is not as easy as people actually think it is. And also that in relation with exhibitors, because we are dealing with 27 venues, that is already too much for us. And also that some distributor at that sort of venue don't really have an online platform. And then we can't really sort of disadvantage one, venue which doesn't have an online, but all of a sudden there is an online screen there somewhere, and then all UK audience can see it. You may actually disadvantage the number of audience flowing into the cinema. So we really have to think about overall holistically, that how much is the advantage in doing online. Sorry, in Eiko, you want to say something?
Yeah, can I just make a point? I think we don't really have to do the screening online, to be honest, because we can create another engagement with the audience. Because what we decided to do is we do the screening at the venues, but we if we can get the grant, we're trying to keep the workshops and directors Q&A online. So in that case, maybe some people are disabled, maybe some people live in a bit far away from the cinema, so we're not missing out to these people either. And we actually done the calligraphy workshop in January, and we put on YouTube, and we had more than 1,000 views in a week.
Right.
So yeah, I think it depends on because there's a way, because obviously these issues with distributors, and I think we can be listening again, we can be flexible. It doesn't have to be, festivals. Yes, we do screen the films, but it doesn't really always have to be the screenings. There's different ways of engaging with, maybe networking events online, or there's a lot of ways of doing it, I think.
Okay, I just I have to be conscious. I always, tell the moderator from the third party, you have to keep a time. Then I'm just completely running over the time. Sorry about that. And then just want to actually pick the last question. It's San Martin says, as well as a hybrid festival, have you considered spreading a festival over multiple venues across the country? Of course. Some of you already done that. April has got a British person in Cardiff, another sort of Wales venue, and then Sonali did that. Did that as well. What about Joshua? Do you have any plan to go beyond London?
We just don't have the resources to be able to do that, unfortunately. It's a very small team throughout the year, just myself and George, and unfortunately, just with other work commitments, like we're not able to travel around the country and put on our festival. We'd love to be able to do that. I think it's very much funding based, funding dependent. So I mean, maybe. What's the space?
What about Sonali? Do you have any advantage, disadvantage in having that in expanding venues?
I think it ties into our distribution work quite well, because we work with cinemas that we work with a lot. And have done over years. I mean, our team are actually split between Edinburgh, Newcastle and London, so that does facilitate things. But there are often times when we can't physically be there. But if we have an opportunity at other venues, other cities, then those are opportunities that we're keen to take. But yeah, I would say it has stemmed very much from, well, it's twofold. Our distribution work really stemmed from our work in festivals and going around the country, and then that facilitated distribution, and then it's kind of fed back into the sort of, the mechanics of working on a touring program. Funding is also very crucial to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, that touring film program, we got 27, was it 27, 28? I can't really remember. 27 venues we have, but we have only 2 people, including me, and in good time it's 3. Then just running this program, and then this is not only work we do. So running that film screen in different venues is really time consuming. As Sonali said, I just can't go physically in every single venue. I mean, I was planning to, all of a sudden my budget ran out, and I can't go anywhere. So it just and also my colleagues said, why don't you downsize it, because it's just too much. Although I have a feeling, strong passion to reach out as many audience possible. Of course, not just everybody has that feeling, for that. But I think it's resource-wise, funding-wise, it's just restricted. I think that's all issues, I suppose. All right, I think we need to wrap up. Just lastly, can you say a few words that your future plan from E, please?
So I think this year we will be running our main festival in London in May, and it will be 7 venues across London, 12 days. And then from August to December, we will go on tour. This year we will have 15 cities. And I think the majority of our work now is trying to, I want to echo in the chat, talking about accessibility. We are trying to do as much as we can with our resource. So we are ensure for example, captions in our films, and also we are exploring the different pricing models. For example, under £5 or sliding scales for a young person. I think these are kind of our main focus now, trying to make our film screenings as accessible as possible. So yes, that's the current plan.
Joshua?
So, I mean, we're on a hiatus this year just due to our sort of work commitments elsewhere. But those conversations still need to be had. Again, funding dependence. So, we do have ideas for the next festival, but it won't be this year. So yeah,
You're just taking a pause, or this year?
we're taking a pause. Yeah, we're having a hiatus this year.
Right. Okay. Sonali?
I mean, having had a pause for the last 2 years, we're certainly eager to get back into cinemas with our festival, but at the same time, the Japan program that we did at the end of last year has been our major focus for, I don't know, the last 3-4 years that we've been working on it. And it was intended as a 3-year project to actually run for 3 years. So we're going to continue focusing on that and to develop it further, because the way that we had to do it was very constrained from the original ambition.
Right.
So we're going to build on that. We're probably going to do one of the curatorial project this year, and then see where we can take Aperture beyond that, because it's all very much funding dependent. We'd love to be able to build on the fundraising we've done, so that we can have a paid team. We're all volunteers, as I'm sure you know most of us are, and it's really tough running a film festival on a shoestring budget. So yeah, funding is really critical to that, and also we would really love to do more work with archive film. We've done a limited amount, and that's something that we would really like to develop further.
Eiko?
Okay, so yeah, so our plan is we do the screenings, the venues, possibly in October, and we are also trying to do some of the other elements of the Japanese culture, such as manga, but we then again we are still pitching it, so we haven't got the grant yet. So but I'm hoping we can keep the online events as well, so even maybe people still isolating because of COVID, they can still join our festival. Maybe not the physical screening, but they might be able to join our online events. We're happy to travel any venue.
I think that's a sort of partnership venue is very important. We got some very good partner venues, and they are very eager. So I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do it. So I appreciate all of that. Japan Foundation touring film program venues, thank you so much. And also the COVID hasn't actually, cleared and over. People actually had a misunderstanding that it's actually completely gone. No, it's not. So, and then we don't know what is happening, in the future ahead. So we have to keep an eye on what we could do, to be honest. But in any case, that I hope that everybody joining today, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you do, you are in terms of background, today's discussion was useful for you. And I hope that it's not going to be that it wasn't a discussion where the people actually giving a grudge on how difficult it is to organize a film festival. I hope that you can take something away from what we experienced, and maybe you can be a competitor, for us in the future, setting up the new film festival on Japan. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to your challenge as well. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, E and Joshua, Sonali, and Eiko. What you have done are really great, remarkable, admirable. And then I hope that you continue, even you take some pause sometimes, you continue to do it in the future to make sure that there are more Japanese films in this country. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right.